Okay. Well, hi, Mary.
Hi.
Good to have you here today. I've known you, I think, for probably 4 or 5 years now through Rotary.
Yes, that's right.
And you are the executive director of the Heartland Lakes Development Commission. Okay, I was going to try to say that without help, but I got a little help at the end. That's okay. And it's your 4th year in that position.
Right.
And I ask you what that is in a second. But before then, you were an executive at the HRDC, which was the Hubbard?
It's the Headwaters Regional Development Commission.
Headwaters Regional Development Commission. Okay.
Yep.
And you held that position for about 20 years or so.
Yeah,
right?
27.
27 years.
Yes.
And you're a graduate from Rasmussen College in St. Cloud, where you have a degree in accounting.
Yes.
Okay, meaning that you're good with math and numbers.
Yes.
That's probably a prerequisite to having the kind of job that you have.
Yeah, probably.
So what is the Heartland Lakes Development Commission?
It's the economic development entity for Hubbard County and the city of Park Rapids. What that means is that we really work on the development drivers for making the community really livable and have a great quality of life, and to really spur economic growth. So we get involved in grant applications for beautification of the downtown. We get involved in housing. We get involved in childcare, workforce development, business attraction and retention, site location, entrepreneur development, small business assistance. So it's really a wide range of activities.
That's a lot more than I thought it was, because basically, well, is this the same entity that Dave Collins headed up when he was with us?
Yes, it is. In 2009, right when I started, or 2019, shortly after I started, we went through strategic planning, which resulted in rebranding and renaming. Okay. So that's where the name came from, to really align with the Heartland Lakes brand that was created.
Yeah.
And then really thought about what is it that we should be doing, and came up with the mission statement to inspire and retain economic growth. Yep. So that's really a really broad statement, but it's really about any of those things that make life here better.
Yeah, and it's not just about, like, I think a lot of people, well, I shouldn't say a lot of people, but I'll just talk about myself. When I thought of that entity, I thought of it as almost solely devoted to attracting business to the area. And what you talked about was just so much more than that.
Right. And frankly, business attraction is less attractive for communities right now because our existing employers can't find workers. So if we think that we should bring in more businesses to make it even more of a struggle, that's really not necessarily a good play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So improving quality of life as sort of an overarching goal of the commission is, so maybe if business development would be a byproduct of that, but that's not actually the goal of the organization.
Right. And so there are times when it makes a lot of sense to attract a business. And we are actually working on some activities that may include business attraction. But the number one thing that we're hearing from our employers right now is we don't have enough workers.
Yeah.
We're short-staffed. And so then in looking a little bit more deeply into what that means, here it means there's no place for them to live.
Right.
And then once we get here, we can't find any place to have our child. So childcare becomes an issue. So really, in order to help our businesses expand and succeed, we have to address these other issues to help them get the workers that they need, and so that they can expand and grow.
Yeah. Okay. So when we're so in other words, what we need to do is increase the population of the was it the county and the city that it covers? Or?
Yes, we
Okay.
serve both.
Yep.
And that is true. We just simply don't have enough workers here, warm bodies that are willing and able to take the positions that we have available. So we really do have to attract others here. And then that means that if they're taking jobs, then they're spending money at our stores, and they are, coming to our schools and doing all of those things. So the byproduct of having someone in means growth exponentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know there's been a few different apartment complexes that have been built in the last 2 or 3 years, but aside from just building more apartments or building more single family dwellings, how does one attract people from the outside to come here, or is it more about retaining people who have gone through the educational system here?
I think it's both. I think that we need to, first and foremost, keep our talent. We have kids who have grown up here that, for one reason or another, generally like living in this community or in this county. And we need to make sure that, number one, that students understand the opportunities that are available. I don't think that businesses always show that they have really good jobs here, and those jobs don't always require 4-year degrees.
Interesting, yeah.
And so we have to do a much better job of finding ways to make sure that our students really understand the opportunities here. Yeah. And then, to the extent that that isn't enough, then we attract folks. And we have amazing natural amenities in this area that really do speak to a lot of people. We are very progressive in our arts opportunities as well, and we're culturally diverse. So that really does speak to a lot of people who are looking for smaller pace or smaller communities, a little bit slower pace, wonderful natural amenities, interesting arts opportunities, excellent schools. It's a safe community or a safe county. So we have a lot to offer.
Let me give you a hypothetical situation here. Young man, junior in high school, let's say attending Park Rapids, passionate about hunting and fishing, can work with his hands, but maybe and can do schoolwork and make A's and B's and things like that, but isn't really driven by academic subjects, and so is kind of on the fence about whether or not to go to college. But he's unsure about whether he can obtain let's say a high-paying job, or maybe somewhere where he's got aspirations to be somewhere in the 6 figures at some point, not overnight, in this area. What does this community have to offer? What does the people who are promoting this community, such as yourself, have to say to a person in that situation? So,
first of all, the trades, which means it's electrical, plumbing, heating, auto repair, welding, any of those trades are in very high demand and actually pay very well. Right. A lot of them are union positions, so they come with some sort of a benefit. I would be remiss in not saying that the ag industry is actually a very good opportunity as well.
You're talking about the agricultural farming.
Farming. We have Lime Weston RDO, which is our potato plant, but as a support to that, we have a lot of people who grow the crops that are used there. And so therefore there's tractor work or harvesting or any of that. We have DNR, forestry kinds of positions. Yeah. So if you really like to be outside, you can be managing forests, you can be managing wildlife. You don't have to be a conservation officer to work for the DNR. The SWCD, which is the Soil and Water Conservation District, has a lot of environmental kinds of jobs that are available as well. And all of those allow for an opportunity to start, get some education or experience, and then move on and move up.
Is there any kind of vocational program that a person like who was considering getting into one of those trades but wasn't maybe sure where they fit in could get some sort of counseling or something like that?
There's a couple options. So our school district in Park Rapids has some amazing opportunities through their Panther Tracks program. And those are career paths that are classed in such a way that you can take the classes under that particular track and get education to meet the requirements, but also are specific to the kinds of things that you're interested in. And then that program also connects with employers that will allow for internships and summer jobs and those kinds of things, so you can kind of test the waters to see if that's something that you're really interested in.
Yeah, okay. And I think next week there's something Panther First or something like that. It's sort of like a roundtable discussion with people. Crystal Murphy was telling me about it, where you can kind of talk to people in the school. So if a person would kind of have to have an idea, well, maybe I ought to be a welder, or, maybe I ought to drive a tractor or something like that. And through the school, primarily, they could maybe get a little bit of guidance and advice on that.
Those who are in the early stages or still in high school, that's probably the best opportunity.
Yeah.
Another opportunity is with the Neva School District. One of the things that they have that's really unique in this area is they have an amazing robotics program. So they have a group that actually competes nationally on the building of robotics. And so that's another opportunity where it may not be as a class, but it could be as a club within the school. So for instance, Park Rapids has the FFA, Future Farmers of America. And there are other clubs and activities in most of the schools that you can access some of those testing the waters kinds of positions.
Yeah. And how much does the commission get involved in kind of liaising with the school and making sure that they're aware of all the different opportunities that are available?
So one of the things that our role is to help connect businesses to the schools. So if the school wants to offer internships, they're going to have to be able to connect with businesses. So that's where Crystal and I work together to identify businesses where students can land. Or if we have a business that has a particular need, we can look at whether or not there's some coursework that we can develop. So it's about bringing that business then to the school and saying, hey, we have this particular need. Is there something that we can do to foster that within the school district?
And how much success has that relation, the relationship between the commission and the school, how much success has that enjoyed from, in terms of placing students or,
I think it's really impacted a lot. The other thing that we do in cooperation is sponsor the annual career fair. We're coming into our third year of that. At our last year,
so the commission actually sponsors that.
We co-sponsor that.
Okay.
So it's the school district, ourselves, and the Chamber of Commerce who put that on every year. And last year we had 60 vendors and 400 individuals that went through.
Wow.
300 of them were students, and then 100 were adults that came in.
Oh.
And were able to access the employers that were looking for workers.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
And when is that?
That is typically in the spring, early enough so that those primarily resorts and seasonal businesses have the opportunity to gather some of their summer workers.
Yeah, I didn't even mention the tourism industry as well. But,
yeah.
So just so I have this straight, the commission itself, is that a not-for-profit, or is it a governmental entity, or what is it?
We're a nonprofit entity. When we were formed back in 2005, it was a partnership between the city, the county, and business community. No one of those entities had the ability to really focus exclusively a person on economic development.
Right.
So by partnering, they were able to gather and create resources that allowed them to have an organization with a full-time person. We've grown, so we have 2 full-time people.
Yep.
We've actually also added on our hangar, which is our cooperative working space. And it still has been a very successful partnership between all 3 sort of groups.
Yeah. Okay. So we talked about retaining local people. What kind of efforts do you guys make to try to attract people from other communities? Like, which communities do you target, and is there advertising, or how does that work?
So right now, we have not actively pursued. We're letting our employers do that. Right now, what we're focusing on, our work is making sure that if they can attract somebody, they have the ability to stay.
Okay.
So we're focusing primarily right now in the immediate future is our housing development projects and then our potential child care projects.
So it's starting with that. I mean, I suppose that would apply to both people who are going to stay and also people who are coming from different areas. Housing right now in our community, are we fully saturated? I mean, if a person, say, was able to obtain some sort of a wage job here to start, let's just say, how difficult would their experience be in trying to find affordable housing, and what's being done to address that?
So it would be nearly impossible. We have in the owner-occupied area about a 1% vacancy rate, and we have a less than 1% vacancy rate in the rental area.
Yeah.
So virtually there's nothing, especially quality rentals. If you find something available, it's probably not very quality. So what we're doing from an organization perspective is a couple years ago, we purchased 20 acres that we were targeting for housing development. And we broke ground last year actually now, on a 58 unit rental project that is going to be affordable for our workforce. So starting in July of 2024, roughly, we'll be having 58 new units available, from everything from studio apartments to 3 bedrooms.
But the construction will be complete.
Yes. Yep.
Where's that going to be?
That's right next to Walmart.
Okay. That big field that's there?
Yep, that big field. It's
just east of Walmart, right?
Just east of Walmart. The buildings are actually enclosed. They're putting the windows in this week. So they're moving right along. It's 2 buildings, and then we have a community space in the center of the 2 buildings. So, for birthday parties or gatherings, you don't have to say, well, I've got this little teeny tiny apartment, I can't have anybody over ever. There's this space that will be made available.
Barbecue area and things
yes,
like that.
absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, great. And which construction company is working on that?
Well, there's a whole bunch. The general contractor is BOD Construction, and they have a bunch of subcontractors. And when we bid it out, we made sure that there was a preference for Hubbard County businesses. So over half of all of the contractors who are working on it either reside or hang their shingle as a Park Rapids or Bemidji, Hubbard County business.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. And then wasn't there also a park space that was contemplated for that too?
There is. So the city of Park Rapids requires that when you do development, there's park land as part of that. We are working on thinking about the big picture of all of the land in that area. So we're trying to work with the city to develop an area that makes the most sense for a park, and then the size of the park so that it really does accommodate the build out of the development there. We have also submitted some grants to fund the rest of that parcel in single family. So we need to build roads. And if you build roads, they're very expensive. And if we did that without any kind of assistance, the eventual homeowners would have to pay some sort of an assessment. And so we're trying to get grant funding to put in as much of that infrastructure as possible. So as we're working on that whole build out, we're also thinking about where's the best opportunity to put a park so that it's highly utilized and then accessible for all of the residents, particularly in that area, but community wide.
Yeah. So that'll be 54 units. Once those, and I don't know how those are going to be distributed, but once they are, let's say, opened up to the public, how quickly do you anticipate that they'll be rented, or are they all already spoken for?
They are not already spoken for. In fact, we have just opened a waiting list. So if anybody is interested, they can contact us and they'll be put on a waiting list. And then when we get closer to opening, we'll actually have people go on the waiting list and start going through the application process. I expect that it will not take very long for them to fill.
Yeah.
So that's why we are actually opening the waiting list now, because for a benefit for our employers, if they know that in 6 months there's going to be housing, then and they get a name on a waiting list, then potentially they can attract that employee, or someone will know that they can stay. So that's why we've opened it now.
Any idea what it's going to be called yet, or
it's Pinecrest Apartments?
Okay.
Yep. And so that's the name of it. And this is a true community-wide effort. It would not have been possible if the county, the city, and the school district hadn't have done some heavy lifting with a tax abatement and then some additional resources, because those will allow us to make those units affordable. If we had to get a loan for all of those, the rents per unit would be so high that they would be out of reach for most of the folks who live in this community. So because of that heavy lifting, they will be affordable.
Have you guys done any studies on pricing them out and what the ranges might be for rents for those, or I mean, you don't have to tell me, of course, but
no, absolutely. Yeah. We are targeting $1,000 for a 2-bedroom. And that will include pretty much everything. We haven't set an exact number. It may be, $50 or $100 more or less, depending on. We're still working out what we need to do about electricity. Yeah. And then we're still trying to figure out if there was any cost overruns or those kinds of things. So
that would include heating and water and internet and all that.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great.
Electricity may be a separate cost, but again, we're still working out on that.
Yeah.
We have to be light on our feet. We're trying to qualify for some additional assistance for electricity long term, which means that the units may include electricity, and then that might have to price the rents a little bit. But
sure,
that's our target.
Okay. And then once that one gets done, I suppose then you'll be looking to do, new projects in housing as well, because if the 54 units are going to fill up quickly, then it just has to keep going, doesn't
right.
it? Yeah.
Right. So we've already, as I said, we're working on the infrastructure for the rest of that land, and we're hoping that we'll be able to entice some developers to build some single-family units.
Yeah.
Again, that will be affordable, so that they're priced at a place where people can really afford to have them. With the interest rates rising the way they are, it's becoming less attainable as a dream for people that are making $50,000 to obtain home ownership.
Yeah, I read somewhere, and this was an average, I think, across the United States. So of course, it's not maybe true for this community, but that basically the family had to have a gross income of about $120,000 to even think about home ownership at this point.
Yes, and in many communities, it's not quite that high here, but it's very close.
Yeah. What do you have any estimates, or have you run any numbers on that? What it might be?
So the interest rate generally is the target. We do fortunately have a couple programs here through USDA that can help households that typically wouldn't be able to purchase homes get into them. One is available through the local lenders, and then one is available directly from USDA. So that helps bridge some of those gaps. What we're really trying to target is get a house priced at about $200,000, which with some of the other tools that we have, we think that probably somebody about $45,000 to $55,000. That's about the range that we can get someone in.
Yeah.
So,
and it's amazing that, I mean, even, 5 years ago, you could get quite a house for $200,000 in this area.
yes, you could.
And now it just seems that everything has completely skyrocketed.
Yeah. And
I mean, due in part to the interest rate,
right. Yeah.
But
it's a supply and demand issue.
Yeah.
And the less the supply, the higher the demand, and pricing tends to go with it. And so it hasn't been the housing market hasn't not been affected by it either. So
have you any way of tracking or paying attention to the phenomenon of people who hold jobs in other cities, buying real estate, mostly pricey real estate up here, and working remotely? I mean, I know a lot of people talk about that, like, oh, they think there's a lot of that going on, but is there any way to know, and do you have any idea if that's really a big thing that's going on in this area?
Well, I don't have any concrete numbers, but anecdotally that has happened significantly since COVID. So one of the things that makes our area unique is that there has been a really high incidence of people with summer cabins,
right,
or summer residents. Well, when COVID hit, they ended up coming up here to be
Sure.
safe. And then a lot of employers said, well, hey, you can work remotely. And so a lot of them said, yep, I'm staying. And that's part of the reason for our cooperative working space, because we did acknowledge that even though you're working here at your kitchen table, sometimes that's not the best place to be working. So we have this opportunity.
So let's talk about that. So it's the hangar,
Right.
And I think it's been around for about a year and a half, or
year and a half. We're in our just the beginning of our third year.
Third year. Okay. All right. So what is it? And you started to talk about what it was, but yeah.
Yeah. So it's a cooperative working space and an entrepreneur business assistance resource center. So for instance, yesterday we had a lunch and learn that was available to businesses so they could come and access training resources and those kinds of things. The cooperative space allows for someone who doesn't have a regular office to come and have an office environment. So we have tables that are set up. If you're a person that just likes to work at a table, we have semi-private cubes that you can sit at. We're in the process of adding 2 private offices. So they wouldn't be a permanent office, but you could come in and use it and have privacy. So sometimes people have a job that requires privacy, and they'll be able to have that as well. We have a conference room and then a small meeting table. There's also a kitchen facility. We have high-speed internet that is amazing. We have high-capacity printer and a wide format printer that people can access for the use of the space. It is 24-hour access as long as you contact us and get the appropriate key card, and then you can use it sort of whenever you need to.
And it's intended to be more of a work space rather than sort of like an a la carte office solution or something like that. So in other words, like you couldn't get your own telephone number out of there, or could you?
No, because most of the time now everybody uses a cell phone.
Right.
Very, very often you don't have a desk phone anymore either. So, but it is really not. We would prefer that people not use our mailing address. It's really about coming, using the space, having a really high quality office environment, but it's not necessarily that it's where you hang your shingle.
Sure.
We would love people to come every day because we like having, the extra people around and having a lot of vibrancy going on, but it's not intended for a permanent office solution.
It's kind of like I think of it as like if you're a member of it, it's sort of like being a member of a gym, right? So like you need to go in and you don't go in and work out, you go in and work. But if you got a dog that's barking or that you've got something else going on at the house where it's noisy. Hey, I just got to get away today to go someplace and sit somewhere quietly and work. It's ideal for that.
Right. And as we continue to grow our membership, one of our other goals is to create a network. So if people are there, we're hoping that they visit with each other and start to learn about each other and network and help with problem solving or connections or any of those things that you don't get when you're working at home by yourself.
Yeah.
So you work at home, you're lonely potentially, and you have no really person to bounce ideas off of. So as we grow, that's one of our other goals that we're trying to do is organically develop networks.
Yeah, I think collaboration is so important, even for somebody who's doing their own solo business or something like that. I remember back when I was in New York, we had a small business and, it was a law firm, but there was 3 of us and we all used to sit around and discuss our cases with each other and stuff like that. But whereas like if you're on your own, you have nobody to consult with but yourself.
Right.
You have nobody, hey, could you read this? Or, do you think this is the right thing to do? Or is this the cheapest way to do this or to do that? And so it's really beneficial, I think, to have other people around. Plus, I also think that people need other people just to be social, and it's not good for people to be by themselves.
We were not created as singular beings.
Right.
We were intended to have communities around us.
I agree with that.
And so that's really what that's about. And even things like, oh gosh, I need some business cards. Where did you get yours printed?
Right.
Or where should I go for, I need to get a computer fixed. Who should I talk to about that? Yeah. So it's even those little things that people can help and share with each other on.
Yeah. So the commission is funded by the city, the county. Is there a budget that goes to that from both of those entities? But then you also have to do your own fundraising, right?
I do. So we do get a stipend or an allocation from both the city and the county every year. I go and make a request and it shows up on their budgets. And then we do have some very generous businesses that donate to us on a regular basis, but that's just not enough. And so we also have to go and do fundraising and try and support the services. Because right now we don't have to charge for our services. So except for the hangar, which is a different sort of beast and part of that, but any of our business assistance services, anything that we provide to any of the communities in the area are all at no cost. In order to keep those costs those services at no cost, we have to raise funds.
Yep. So I know this evening it's this podcast is not going to be up in time to promote it, but you'll be having a fundraising dinner at the Legion.
Yes, we're calling it a winter showcase, and most of the reason for that is to continue to get the word out about all of the services that we can provide. We're gaining in recognition, but we still have a long way to go. So that's part of what we're doing. And then the other part of that is strictly for fundraising. So it's a taco dinner that we're holding and then having a silent auction.
You do that annually?
Well, this is our first, but I'm guessing it is going to be at a minimum annually, maybe semi-annually. Yeah.
And those Legion dinners are always fun. I mean, you drive by there and you see there's always seems to be one going on Friday night. It's kind of a good tradition to get into, is just to kind of go there and support whatever it is that's putting on the dinner, because
it is.
There's so many worthwhile things to contribute to.
Right, and the Legion does a really good job of helping to support all of those various entities that are looking for some help.
Yeah. Okay, so I wanted to talk about the future of Park Rapids a little bit.
Okay.
The future of the area. So, and maybe it's a little speculation, have a little fun with this, but a mutual acquaintance of ours boldly proclaimed to me one day that he felt that the Northwoods Bank in a relatively short period of time will be the center of town. Do you see things expanding in that direction so much that whether it be through housing or commercial development, that we can think of the Northwoods Bank as being sort of the center of the whole of the community, from spanning from east to west?
That has a good likelihood.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason for that is a couple things, is that to the south and to the west, we are heavily agriculture, and it is unlikely that that will ever convert because we have such a dominance in the need for the egg as part of our industries.
Yes.
As you start going north, there's a whole lot of lakes.
Right.
So it's very difficult for the community to grow in that direction.
Sure.
So we only have one direction left, which is to the east.
Right.
And so very likely we are going to be seeing over the next 10 years a lot of development on that end of town.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in terms of population, I know that the last census came out, and I think they changed the sign. It said, I think it reached 4,000 for the first time. I think it's like 4,100 or something.
Yeah, 4,260-ish, something like that.
Yeah. Getting out your crystal ball. I don't know when they do it. Is it every 10 years they do it? Mm-hmm. So what would your prediction be for the census in 10 years from now?
Well, actually, our hope is that it's over 5,000, and as a minimum. And the reason for that is that once a community reaches 5,000 residents, then it qualifies for additional assistance directly from the state of Minnesota.
I see.
So the burden...
Is there a term for that?
Probably, but...
You don't know what it is?
I don't know what it is. Angel does.
Okay.
I don't.
Angel Wiesner.
Yes, the city administrator. So, but that's sort of the golden number.
Yeah.
And so our hope is that we can grow the community to be at least that size so that we can qualify for those additional aids. I think that is an easy lift because I think that this community has so much to offer that a lot of people really want to be here. Yeah.
Ideally, you say it's got a lot to offer, but it's also got the tourism industry and the fact that people like to come here for peace and quiet. And I've also heard some grumbling from people that they wouldn't want it to turn into a place like Brainerd. How much thought is put into sort of preserving the I'll call it the bucolic nature of this area?
So first of all, we'll never be Brainerd. We have too many unique qualities and too many amazing things that people don't want to lose. However, if you talk to most of the people that live here now, how did they get here in the first place? They were a tourist. They came up every summer during the whatever and wanted to, and now when I was able to, I moved up here as quickly as I can.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So we want to keep attracting people and we want to keep them moving up here.
Yeah.
And if we don't grow, we stagnate.
Sure. Like any business.
Like
right?
any business. And so, yes, we have the opportunity to attract more. The key is that we do it in a way that creates smart growth, if you will, so that the city looks at where are the appropriate things to do certain businesses and where is it appropriate to do certain developments. How do we create opportunities that are in the more rural areas of the county that would be appropriate for additional growth, so that people aren't necessarily living on top of each other. So it's really about thinking long-term and planning for that future.
Childcare is also another key piece to that you mentioned before. So what would be, if you had to give the State of the Union for childcare in the area, what would be sort of some highlights of that speech?
So I think that primarily it is infant and toddler care is where there's a shortage. Some businesses will say that it's the overnight and off hour or shift care. I'm not as convinced. While they do provide or need some of that, I don't know that that's as short in supply or demand as we really think it is. But I do know very clearly that infant and toddler care is a crisis. I've had more than one employer tell me...
Crisis.
I've had more than one employer tell me that they've had a good worker who was expecting, couldn't find childcare and quit because they had to stay home with their infant because there was no other option. Yeah. So that is truly a significant concern in this community.
So what are some of the things that people are doing to try to address that?
Mahabiatwa has done a lot in creating opportunities, and they have a model where they're providing space to family childcare providers at lower costs. We are actually looking at taking 2 of our apartments and offering them to family childcare providers as well, so that they can provide daycare out of 2 of the apartments. They would not live there. No, they would not live there.
Yeah, okay.
They would be apartments that they could have as a business and be able to take however many their license would allow.
Yeah.
But we could expand between 6 and 8 number for childcare between those 2. And then there are, the issue with childcare from a state perspective is regulation. It's overregulated, and so even at the family childcare provider level, it's very difficult.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about barriers for entry. Yeah,
it's very difficult. There is a lot of effort at the state level to try and reduce some of those barriers. So that's one of the things that we're paying attention to, is having conversations with our legislators, who are then also having conversations with the Department of Human Services, who does the licensing, to try and back off some of those.
What are some of the more onerous ones that could be done away with in your view?
Lot of it is the amount of paperwork that's required. Some of them are regulations like when you have to change a child, what you do with the diaper. And silly kinds of things that aren't necessarily impactful to the quality of care.
Right.
So those are really some of the things that are kind of, you classify it maybe as busy work, or of that status. So those are some of the things. One of the other things that we're doing in this community, and that we go back to the school, is they created a childcare class where the students at the end of the year will graduate as a certified to provide childcare, so that they can, on graduation, open their own family childcare or go to work as for their next training in a center.
That is amazing. So what are the qualifications that a person would have to have if they wanted to, like the bare minimum qualifications to open up their own daycare?
There are 3 classes for a family childcare provider. There's 3 classes that they have to pass. I can't think of the names of them.
They're actual like semester long classes, or
yeah, there's some certifications that you are required to take and test out on, that you are adequately trained to do the CPR and those kinds of things and care for a child. I am not the expert on that, but we are trying to figure out. What I'm hoping is that at least a couple of the students that are graduating from the high school this year could be enticed to open up in our new building. So the timing would be such that
Yeah.
they'll finish school and then hopefully be able to, if that's what their desire is, and then we can provide the business support services
Yeah.
because that's what we do. And then Mojave Atwa can provide the childcare, regulation, licensing, all of those kinds of supports that they need. And between, sort of the three of us, we can get 2 businesses open in the community.
And just so people understand, because maybe we're talking about all this in the abstract, but young person graduates from high school, they go and let's say they open this business. Well, how much money are we talking about? What are the possibilities that a person like that could make in terms of income in their first year? I mean, I'm not holding you to anything, but you said you were good with math and numbers.
Yeah, I am good with math and numbers. However, that is really tough to say, and the reason is because it's a business.
Yeah.
So it depends so much on what the income is from each of the different parents that is hiring. Each age group has a different sort of rate, and then there's different costs associated with it. So I wouldn't want to speculate.
Okay.
But what I do
ballparking it, know.
what I do know is that if you're passionate about childcare and with the tools that are available, you can be comfortable in your selection as that for your business.
Okay. Well, that's a very, I guess, good way to put it.
Yes.
Safe to say it's probably going to be a more rewarding occupation too than maybe some others that might be available in the area, especially if you love kids, right?
Right, exactly. And if you really love kids, it's a way to do that and not necessarily get a teaching degree. Although I don't want to dispel that, teaching is a wonderful profession, and really we need teachers as well because we're getting a shortage of those. But that opportunity to work with small children is one where you don't necessarily have to have a 4-year degree if you're in family childcare and your own business.
Okay. Going to shift gears again. Can Park Rapids support another restaurant? And if so, what kind of restaurant should it be? I guess that's kind of a personal question too.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a book called 13 Ways to Kill Your Community. It is an amazing book. It's a very quick read. And one of the chapters says, don't allow competition. If you want your community to die, don't allow competition. Competition is actually very good because it will allow each of the individual kinds of businesses to focus and create their niche. So that being said, if there is someone who has a restaurant idea that is unique and different than what we already have, great. If it's kind of the same, then they're going to have to figure out what their niche is in order to support themselves. So in my view, by all means, if you've got something, we'll help you do it. And it's going to just need to be unique so that you can compete with what else is here.
Okay.
And the businesses that are already here, they'll just have to maybe tweak a little bit so that they keep their clients coming to them as well.
Yeah. So that they don't get complacent.
Right.
Yeah. If you could wave a magic wand and suddenly there would appear a new restaurant, and forgetting about all the other economic considerations, what kind of restaurant would you want to have here?
I would love seafood.
Okay. Yep. Yeah. All right. So I'll ask you just about a couple of different locations here that I'm kind of been curious about. So one of them is that I think it used to be called Kang's Restaurant or something like that.
Kang's Mongolian Buffet.
Kang's Mongolian Buffet, yeah. That building has been vacant for quite some time. What are the prospects for ever, using that land again? Because it just seems to sort of sit there and it kind of becomes an eyesore after a while.
Yeah, it's Not kind of, it sort of is.
Uh-huh.
So the struggle is that until it really starts falling apart, there is no public action that can be taken.
Okay.
And as it's in the state it is right now, and the owner is continuing to pay their taxes and all of those things, it can't be taken away. And the price that he's asking is not appropriate for the condition of the building.
I see.
So as a result, we have this sort of impasse until something significant happens. Either it starts to deteriorate so badly that it becomes a safety issue, or
Blight or nuisance, or
or the owner decides that they're going to significantly reduce the price so that someone is willing to pay for it. And so we're sort of just in this holding pattern on that particular one.
Yeah, it seems that the owner must not be realistic, because a thing is worth what it'll fetch at the market, right?
Right, exactly.
So clearly it's not worth what he thinks it's worth, if that's so.
Exactly. And, there's a lot of things that go into valuation from a business perspective. So there's the value of the bricks and mortar, but then there's the value of the business as, how you feel about it. And it's very difficult a lot of times for businesses to separate the two.
Yeah.
And it ends up a lot of times in the overvaluation of a property, because the business component is factoring in on how individuals, and that's really, we call that succession planning in the EDA world, and it's about helping business owners understand what they're going to need to do in order to get out of a business as they're looking at retiring. A lot of times these business owners have already paid all their debt, so they don't owe anything on the building or the business. And then if they're looking to sell it, whoever comes in needs to get a mortgage, and the business itself is valued based on the real estate, which doesn't support the cost that they're asking for it. So there's this disconnect that makes it really difficult.
Yeah.
For succession.
Well, and that's why, like, sometimes too, if you look at the financing of some of these business sales or something like that, they separate out the real estate and the assets and everything else like that to try to make it so that it's possible to finance. And sometimes there's even some previous owner financing in a sense.
Right,
when they do
exactly.
That. It was on the front page of the Enterprise within the last couple of weeks that the North Star Dental implement building south of town there was going to cease operations. Has there been any interest from that you know of, or that you can share regarding the future of that building?
What I can tell you is that when I talk to businesses, both locating that are already here and those that are locating, the most difficult thing we do have is to find them a spot. Locations are at a premium. So what I can tell you is that there's already a list.
Okay.
Yeah. So I would venture a guess that building will not be vacant for very long.
Very good. And also just sort of in that neighborhood, the industrial park, it seems like that's pretty much fully occupied. Is there any room for growth, or any talk about developing that area further for more of the types of businesses that would fit in there?
There is one lot left in the industrial park, and the city has been looking at the opportunity to make an expansion. So we are working on an opportunity to add at least some space onto the industrial park to allow for a little bit more growth. Beyond that, there isn't a lot of good options for another industrial park location right now, but we think with the work that we're doing with the city right now, we'll have a little bit of breathing room.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then the other one, and I don't know why I was thinking of some buildings that I was curious about. Another one that came up was what people refer to as the old candle factory there.
Yes.
Is there a business in there now, or what goes on in that building?
Yes,
currently?
it's Leading Edge Mechanical.
Okay.
Yeah, and they have occupied that for, gosh, the way time goes, it's probably 10 years now. And they have, they do some mechanical part thing related to heating and air conditioning.
Oh.
And then they also are a provider of heating and electrical services as well.
Oh, well, you just answered my question then.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was going to ask you. I know that that you are yourself a pretty avid outdoors woman.
Yes.
I was going to say outdoorsman, but that didn't seem to fit. So, tell us some things about kind of like what you like to do in terms of hunting and fishing in the area, and sort of what this area has to offer in terms of those.
Sure.
Yep.
So my overwhelming passions are deer hunting and ice fishing.
Okay.
So that's really what I do the most of. But I also do hunt grouse, and we do fish in the summer as well. But my two passions are that. I actually reside in North Hubbard. Actually, I'm in Clearwater County, but live right by Itasca State Park.
Oh.
So I do take advantage of the lakes in the winter time on Itasca.
Oh.
And then we have a fairly good sized property, so I do all my deer hunting on my own property.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
So I have a wonderful stand with windows and a heater, and I spend
that's
most
nice.
of my time, at least the first week of deer season, out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Since you're up there in that area, and I'm just going to ask you this question. I know a lot of people don't like to give away this type of information, but I'm going to ask you anyways if you don't have to tell me. But DeSoto Lake there, I've always been curious about that lake. It's sort of in the southern part of the Itasca State Park, and it looked like it's sort of a larger lake, but I don't think there's any public access to it, although I think you can kind of walk back there or maybe drag a sled back there in the wintertime. What do you know about that lake?
I don't know anything about that lake, actually. I was trying to go through my inventory.
Yeah.
What I do know is that there are 2 or 3 inaccessible lakes within the Itasca State boundary.
Yeah.
One of them is between Lake Itasca's East Arm and Mary Lake.
Yeah.
And then there's a couple that are beyond Elk Lake. So,
Which some people claim is that the true source of the Mississippi Elk Lake.
Well, actually, elk is.
Oh, you're one of them.
If you look at the way, there is a creek that runs from Elk into LaSalle,
Right.
and then goes through LaSalle and exits LaSalle. Or, I mean, Itasca. I'm sorry. LaSalle is not the right. So, yes, I mean, technically, it could be, but it does really become a river once it exits the Itasca.
Headwater there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, if you wanted to really be technical about it, yes, it flows from one, but it doesn't really become a river until it exits Itasca.
Have you ever tried to fish any of those inaccessible lakes in the wintertime?
I have not.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure if well, I'd have to be in a lot better shape than I am.
Okay.
Because it would require pulling a sled up hills and through the forest and
over the river and through the woods.
Yeah, it'd be tough.
Okay. And Itasca State Park is also, just more around that subject, is also another great attraction to the region as well.
It is.
Right? Yeah.
It's absolutely a shining star for this area.
Okay. So one of the things you shared with me was, in one of the papers that you shared with me, was your personal mission. And I thought it was really cool, so I was going to ask you about that. One of the things that you said that you like to do is to listen deeply. Right?
Yes.
As part of your mission. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what did you mean by that?
It's about not sitting and thinking about what you're going to say next when somebody's talking to you. It's about sitting and actually listening to what they're saying, as opposed to trying to figure out, oh, yeah, I'm going to say this next.
That is great advice, and it's advice that I find that comes up all the time, and it's applicable to every profession. Lawyers get told to do that all the time, especially courtroom attorneys. And when you're being trained to do trials, and if you ever get a training to do that when you're younger, it's one of the first things that the more experienced attorneys will tell you to do, is that when you are performing some sort of an examination, whether it's a direct examination or a cross-examination in court, if you're sitting there with the script, where did you go then? And then did you see anyone there? And what were they wearing? And what did they have anything in their hand? And basically you're just reading a list of questions and you're not paying attention to anything that they're saying. You're going to miss something that's really important, right?
Right.
It's one of the reasons why I try not to make a ton of notes for these interviews, is because I just think it's better when it's conversational, because you really do have to listen to the person.
Right.
And I also think that if you listen to people, they can sense that.
Yeah. Everybody, one of the things that biggest conflicts are about is when people don't really hear each other. And so if you really stop and take the time to listen and then make sure that people feel heard, then it can resolve a lot of conflicts without even having them start.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Displaying inner strength. So how do we do that?
So, it's not necessarily appearing rattled, having a calmness, and just having a sense that, everything's okay. If you're fidgety or you are sort of having outbursts or any of those, that doesn't really help to show the situation, and
Yeah.
So being sort of calm and having a strength or fortitude and knowing that, I'm strong inside, and so whatever's happening sort of around me isn't going to necessarily rattle me, good or bad. It's all right. It's, it'll be okay.
Yeah.
And sort of providing that sort of peace and calm is a good thing.
You know what? I heard once that the quality that you're describing is inner strength has also been called being meek. Is that meek is quiet strength. Meekness is quiet strength or something like that. Do you have any ideas of how you can coach somebody to develop an inner strength, or is that just something that the person has?
No, it's a trainable thing, but it's really about building someone's self-confidence. And so it's really about building people up and helping to have them understand that they are unique, they're important, and really driving home that individuality and how important that is, and that you are enough. So once people sort of believe that, that's when you can get that inner strength.
It's sort of a fruit of that belief.
Yeah.
Being open, nurturing, empathetic, supportive, and steadfast are all great qualities there too. How did you come up with that list?
So I did some work on Covey, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective Leaders. Mm-hmm. And as part of that, in chapter 2, I believe it is, you need to create a mission statement. And so while I was doing that workbook and working through that, it was looking at, okay, what is it that I am and that I want to be. A great quote is that was not in the book, but somebody had told me once, and unfortunately I don't remember if it should be highlighted as credited to someone, but you become what you want to be by being what you want to become.
You become what you want to be by being what you want to become.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's about practice. And so if you create a mission statement that is a little bit about who you are, but who you want to be, and you practice being what you want to be, then you end up through habit becoming that.
And I've heard of a somewhat of a variation on that, which is dress for the job that you want, not the job that you have.
Right. Same thing.
Same idea,
thing.
right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Same idea.
You've talked a lot about some of the things that young people can do to to maintain a good paying position and be active in this community and remain here and everything like that. But aside from those things, do you have any general advice that you might give a young person that doesn't necessarily relate to employment? It could relate to life, love, anything really, that you could impart for us today.
Words of wisdom.
Yeah.
I think that again that you are enough. I think that our youth right now are bombarded with all kinds of challenges and issues and things that break down their self-esteem. And it's really that each individual is individually unique, and it's important. And we need variety and we need individuality to have a community, and that's okay. And I think, understanding that that's okay is important.
Mm-hmm. Well, Mary, those are very wise words. They're very much appreciated, as has all of your information that you've given today. Thank you for all the great work that you do. I enjoy being in the Rotary Club with you and interacting with you on a semi-weekly basis and everything like that. And it's just great being your friend. So, Mary, thank you for being here today, and hopefully we'll hear from you some other time.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.